Welcome to Curious Life of a Child-Free Woman, a podcast celebrating unconventional choices and asking curious questions through the lens of a happy, child-free life. Every week, I chat with experts on today's most interesting topics, inspiring us to think differently, live intentionally, and find fulfillment on our terms. Whether you're child-free or seeking a space where parenthood isn't part of the conversation, you are welcome here. It's not about comparison, it's about possibility. Let's get curious together. I did not think about legacy much before I started this podcast, but it's a context and a conversation that has come up more than I expected in the DMs and in outreach from listeners. I love it when you reach out, by the way. So, DMs, comments, please never hesitate to start a conversation with me. But what keeps circling around is this reality that in a world that so often ties purpose to parenting, how do we think about legacy without it being related to our biology or some generational contribution? How do we leave something meaningful behind simply by the way we live from day to day? To help me explore and understand this topic, I am so happy to be joined by a woman who has a very interesting lens on legacy, Laura Sura. Laura is the founder of Heritage Within, a nonprofit that helps people redefine identity, belonging, and legacy beyond traditional expectations. As an adoptee and lifelong advocate for purpose-driven living, Laura offers a powerful perspective on how we can build lives rooted in values, not just in bloodlines. Welcome, Laura.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for coming. Okay, so much to talk about. I already revealed that you are adopted, but of course there's a lot more to the story than that. And I thought it might be a good place to start just for you to share a little bit about your background and the family structure that you have developed for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am adopted. I was adopted when I was younger, and back then it was a closed adoption. So I don't know anything about my birth parents. We have one letter that was written for the adoption process, and that is about it. My mom was unable to have children, so it was me. And then she also, 7 years later, adopted my brother. My brother's adoption was totally unique to mine and was
Mhm.
an open adoption. So they were able to freely contact if he was open to it at that time.
Uh-huh.
Um, and so I, on my side, have not had any like calling or inkling to pursue that type of contact. It does open up for anyone who doesn't know when you turn 18, a closed adoption does legally open up. So I could go through channels to try to find who those individuals are. I just haven't felt called to do that. I have my own family now. I have built that life without that piece.
Uh-huh.
So I haven't felt like there's this pull to know what is that legacy heritage that I come from.
I appreciate you sharing that. I think it's a really interesting and cool perspective that those of us that aren't adopted don't have a lens into to kind of understand that feeling. And I respect that for you, there hasn't been that instinct that you want to go through this research path and kind of pulling these people into your lives when you have a life that is so full with
Yeah.
your family and the family that you have created. So tell me more like this idea of identity. I think for a lot of us, whether we mean to or not, there is this subconscious connection between like who we are and the parents in our home and the way that we're raised. Like, how do you think about that or see that as someone who was adopted and, had a different experience than
Mhm.
your brother?
For me, growing up, my parents were always very open. They were always very like, "Hey, you were adopted. This is why. This is the process. Like, we want to tell you this story." In terms of growing up, it wasn't really a question back then. It wasn't something that like triggered me or I needed to like know what the DNA was or anything like that. It wasn't until more recently that I started having different experiences with my own children, with my brother, things like that, where it started coming up that in society, it to me feels like it is very driven to figure out those ties, your bloodlines, your heritage. And there's not a ton of support in the way of where you don't necessarily have a story or it's not defined if you don't have a family tree or if you don't have a bloodline or this or that, right? And
Uh-huh.
just a quick little story, like my 17-year-old is coming to me even just this last year and was in school and he came home and he was like, I don't know what to do. I'm super frustrated. I go, what is the problem? Well, I'm in history class. We have this project that needs to be done, and we have to figure out our family tree so that we can figure out the point of origin to write a paper about that place. And I
Uh,
said, "Oh, okay. So what did you choose?" Like, completely oblivious to the fact that this would be a problem. A little backstory for you, because I'm adopted, because it's a closed adoption, I don't have that history. The oldest son is also adopted by my husband. He stepped in when he was 3 months old, and we don't have the heritage or, health records or anything like
uh-huh.
that from his biological father. So everything stops for him at me.
Uh,
And so when he told that to his teacher, the immediate response from his teacher was, "Just pick one." And he got so disheartened and
no.
frustrated with that. Like, even now I get choked up about it a little bit because it's like there's so many different ways to handle that situation, right? Like, just because he doesn't know the physical health documents or bloodline does not mean he can't explore me, his
Mhm.
adoptive dad, his other options out there. I feel like I respect and love teachers. My dad is a teacher, but I feel like there were so many other opportunities to help move him through this process without just defaulting to the, "Oh, you don't know anything, so pick one," right?
Uh-huh.
And that felt to him so impersonal
Uh-huh.
in the setting that was deeply personal for other people. And
Uh,
so just moving through processes like that, it just taught me that, like, this is a really big unseen struggle for other people.
uh-huh.
And society just assumes, in my eyes, that everyone can trace their lineage and that everybody wants to know their biological roots and that basically your identity is tied to that and you are an incomplete person without that. But it's so much more complex than that or just making them feel that isolation, right?
Those words you just said about self-identity and being an incomplete person, I mean, those words feel so relatable to me on the child-free side, right? Like, I think those are things that are thrown around when people question those of us that decide not to have children and not to adopt children, like, we're just gonna live the life path of not being a parent in any capacity, any direct capacity. Yeah, like, that becomes part of our identity. And some of us love stepping into that. Obviously, I've built a whole show around it. And
Yeah.
some people really don't want that to be connected to their identity, or worse, consume their identity when we're such complex people with so many moving parts. And I think that assumption that our lives are incomplete, there's something incomplete within us because we don't want to choose that path, that's
Yes.
really triggering in the child free world. And I understand why that experience with the teacher was triggering for your son. And I'm sorry that happened. It's like this idea of ambiguity, right? Like, oh, if you don't have it down on paper because you have this very traditional upbringing, like maybe majority of people in this country at this time do, if you don't have that, then like it doesn't really matter. Just make something up, right? Like that feels
Yes.
hurtful when we live in a society, as you said, that it drives us to focus on those pieces of where we come from and just
Yeah.
traditional lineage, bloodlines, ethnicity, all of that
Mm.
stuff. But that doesn't have to define our identity. Some people don't want to relate to maybe where they came from, or they don't want those relationships for personal reasons. That doesn't mean you have no identity. That just means
Yeah.
we need to think differently about how we form that in our own minds. So how do you think about that piece of self-identity kind of separate from where we quote unquote come from?
something you said too hits home. It's not just for the adopted or for someone who chooses not to have children in their life. It's for anybody that is also trying to break free from a past that no longer serves them, right? Like
Uh-huh.
there are so many different ways where we are as individuals trying to evolve and trying to make this space for our lives. It's really about figuring out the reflection of who you are and where you want to go. And so one of the things that I'm also writing a book, spoiler alert, um
Amazing.
yes, for Heritage Within, one of the things that I have come up with is what I call the rise framework, right? And so it's literally rising from within yourself,
Mm,
remembering where you came from, because that is something that is important, right? I came from a closed adoption. I'm never going to not say that's where I came from because
uh-huh.
I'm proud of that. And that can be anybody. Just remembering that piece so that you can then focus on I integrating it. How do you want that to be your story? How do you want that to be the vision of where you go forward? And then just focusing on S, strengthening, right? What is going to be that version of you, right? You're going to build this, whether it is going to be an inheritance that you leave, whether it's going to be the beliefs that you choose to keep and move forward with. I mean, so many different other aspects of that so that you
Uh-huh.
can strengthen where you stand and what you are claiming for yourself and then just expanding that, right? Tell
Mm.
the world and make it bigger and make it louder. It doesn't have to be this journey of stepping back and being like, well, this is where I came from and I don't like that. So now I don't know how to go forward, or cutting yourself off from feeling like you belong in a certain area. It's
Mm.
really noticing that this is the journey and everybody's journey is different and everybody's story is different, and that is okay, and figuring out how to tell that story to help other people realize that is okay, so that that way it can make that ripple effect, so then we can start to change what we see as being different and what we see as being the legacy in a society that is still saying it needs to be on paper.
I love that framework. Thank you for sharing that with us. And it feels like all of those pieces to me, like what was coming into my brain as you were sharing that, is really helping us become whole as an individual in this lifetime. And I don't mean that to be like, I'm sure there are people listening who are like, "Oh, I love my parents and I love what I've inherited from them and like the similarities." That's amazing too. Like it's not about, forcing yourself to disconnect, but I think sometimes this idea that like there's the people that came before us, then there's us, then there's the people that come after us, which is kids. If that structure on either side or both doesn't feel like the fit. And even for those that kind of are on that path, I think this idea of focusing more on who we are as an individual, all life experiences that we've had kind of coming together. How do we identify that, understand that, embody that, strengthen that, and then, as you said, expand and share that? I think there's so much richness there just for us to be incredible people, like with the one lifetime that we have here, like more self aware, more generous of spirit, more just relaxed in our own identity. I think there's a ripple effect of that. And I hadn't thought about this until we're having this conversation, but I actually think that can be maybe a supportive concept too for people who don't want to have kids, but maybe there's something about that generational continuation, like knowing we're not going to do that. There could be a sadness around that. Right. And
Mhm.
I participated, just as an example, I participated in this ceremony. I actually hosted it at my house, and it was really like a women's circle where we were doing these like meditations and sharing and dancing and learning. It was so cool. And, I'm obviously there as a child free person. Others were child free, some were moms, and there was one woman there who was, maybe on the fence about it. And part of the meditation and the visualization was about ancestry and kind of, being in this forest and thinking about like all your ancestors are like coming around you and supporting you. And it was meant to be nothing but like positive love vibes. But
Yeah.
we were talking afterwards and it was shared like, oh, like I kind of felt sad. I'm not going to be anybody's ancestor. And I just thought, that's not true.
Yeah.
Like there's so many people that we're interacting with at all ages, even people older than we are. Like the point of the exercise was to be like, the people who exist in your world and pass before you or whatever can be like a supportive force for you as a human being. You
Yes.
don't have to be blood related to give or receive that type of support. And I just think we need more stories and frameworks like this because our brain does go there and you think like, oh, I won't be anybody's great grandma. Am I sad about that? Like you don't have to be a technical great grandma to give whatever love and support and generosity you're associating with that role.
Okay. So many things. First off, I don't think in knowing you that we've ever discussed that event that you've had because I had a similar event.
Really?
I
Tell
Yes,
me.
I went out on this retreat meditation and we
Hmm.
were doing a breathwork exercise and we were trying to get into that space and they said call on your ancestors so you can feel grounded in what we're about to do. And
Mm,
the first time we did that, this was like a week-long immersion thing that I was dived into, right? And the first time we did that, I did not have a good breathwork experience because I kept thinking subconsciously, I can't connect with those people. I don't know who
mm,
those people are. So, like, does that make my whole experience broken? Like, am I not going to get what I need to get out of this because I've never explored that, right? And
uh-huh,
so then going through that process, by the end of it, they brought to us the fact that an ancestor is not a bloodline person. An ancestor is someone that you have learned from, someone that you have experienced a life altering event from, someone who has just been there to be a shoulder or be around and be a friend, but they've made an impact in some way on your
uh-huh,
life. And that whole shift completely changed how my next breathwork session evolved from there and what I actually was able to like download from that. And it was so cool to be able to make that shift for
uh-huh,
the same type of experience in 2 different days. And I
mm,
just like love that because now hearing it from your side of things too, like you can be that person, right? Like
uh-huh,
I don't know who my ancestors are. But to have you be that person and to have you be that impact on someone else that is going to carry that further is an ancestor. And so
uh-huh.
that is so cool from both perspectives in one setting to be able to hear from your side of things too.
Same. I can't believe I'm glad we're revealing this now between us because
Right?
it's so interesting and like clearly, that is a relatively common practice to do this
Yeah.
ancestral thinking or visualization. And yes, I mean, different. I love that new definition that you gave. And I think that just opens us up not only to think differently about ourselves and again, like this connection to our own past, but to think differently about what we can really give to the world, to society, to other people. We don't have to be connected by these biological lines or generational whatever. Like you can make just as big of an impact without that.
Yeah. And your journey's never done, right? Like
Mm,
heritage, legacy, like all those things, that's just a term, right?
mm,
It doesn't need to be defined by the actual dictionary. Like, legacy can be so many different things. Like, you and your podcast, you're leaving a legacy. You are helping other people. This is going to live on way past right now in this moment. And the lives that it's going to help impact outside of that have a ripple effect and continuation on that. And so it doesn't mean because you choose this life path, that you are not still creating a legacy or creating a heritage within, right? And that's where the name comes from. It's what you want to pull out. And something I will tell you I am a novice on, but I am diving so deep into because of all of this stuff is what they call it's an IFS. So it's internal family systems. It's a type of therapy that's actually out there that I just found
Mm.
recently. And it really just focuses on parts is how they, like, define it, right? It's not bloodlines or individuals or things like that, but it's parts within side of you, within side of your mind, within side of the subconscious and unconscious, and being able to play with those parts so that you can emphasize different origins or different integrations of healing or different models that you want to embody and that you also want to protect, that you want to change, that you want to bring more present. And so
Mhm.
you can dive deep into that. Again, that's not something that I created. That is totally something that I am exploring right now too, because I feel like that's also very aligned with the dynamics of being able to create your own heritage and going
Mhm.
past this approach of on paper, this is who I am. And I don't care if it's on paper with your name, if it's on paper with who you're married to or who you divorced or who you gave up for adoption, right? Because that's
Yep.
also a super hard process for individuals.
Uh-huh.
Choosing to not have children can be a super hard process for some individuals.
Uh-huh.
It's you looking inside of yourself, your person, where you want to go, whether it's religion based, whether it's family focused, whether it's business based. It can be different, but taking a moment to reflect in that process that they align and then choosing and making that distinct choice of what yourself wants to keep, amplify, or release and bless it and just leave it.
That sounds incredibly powerful. I've heard of that modality in therapy, but I have not researched it or like participated in it. And now I'm inspired that I need to.
Yeah.
And speaking of impact and how this perspective can ripple out into the world, you have created an incredible nonprofit. And I feel like explaining it is going to help people kind of conceptualize how we can look at things differently. So tell us more about Heritage Within.
Yeah, absolutely. So, really, it came about to be able to have this safe space where we can redefine the community and the way we look at things, right? And so it came about just for adoptees because when I was doing research in my own path, I didn't feel like as an adult adoptee, there was any more support. There
Uh,
is a whole wide world of support for families who want to adopt, for children who are being adopted and they're like need to understand what that means, and for the moms who are choosing this gift of giving up their children. And I fit into some of those, but also in the same point as an adult, I do not. And so, how do I get the support in the community around not needing to go seek that out
mhm.
or follow society's lines, right? I don't want it to stop there, right? So, there are a couple of fun stats for you guys, and there's more on the website, but there are over 30 million Americans who have unknown or incomplete ancestry. It doesn't matter if it's due to adoption or parentage or estrangement. There are 30 million Americans that have this disconnect that society says you should have.
Uh,
And then when you go to the adoption side of things, when I was researching, right? I fell across a study from American Adoption Council, and they said 1/3 of adoptees feel excluded from conversations just due to their identity crisis, for lack of a better term, or unknowing heritage and assumptions that they have to seek out what that is. 1 in 3. And that is crazy to me that
It is.
there is that kind of need, but not yet support for those people. And so that's really why I started. And it's very baby, it's very new, it's very like dear and true to my heart. I have this vision for this thing to grow and be this huge community so that we can switch that change in numbers and we can feel like we are providing this safe haven, this community of really finding the family and connecting with others who understand judgment free what you're going through, whether you are an adoptee, whether you are redefining your traditions or your absence of traditional ties, or whether you just are someone who's like, I don't feel like I belong and I want to figure out my own identity and my own belonging in this wide world so that
Mhm.
I can disconnect from the societal norms. That is where this needs to go. And so that is kind of the bigger picture of where I want it to go and what it's going to evolve into. I mean, without getting into the nitty gritty of all the fun aspects of a nonprofit, right? Like
Uh-huh.
the way that we're going to grow is having the support, having the therapy, having the different in-person events worldwide to be able to have support groups and inspire people to be able to partner with other coaches or businesses or therapists to be able to create this uplifted movement that we can expand so that there is this network of connection and support, whether it's in person or online or just a forum for people to talk through these experiences that they're having so that they understand there's more, right? It doesn't stop at the fact of not knowing or not wanting to be tied to that there are other people. There is a safe space for you to have those discussions or, find the modalities and the support to be able to figure out where you want to go with where your life is right now.
That mission and even really those statistics that you just shared with us, that is why I wanted to have you on this show and have this conversation because, on its
Mhm.
face, like it's like, oh, like child-free podcast, adoption, like do these two things go together? Sometimes I kind of say like this is a space where we don't talk about parenting. And of course, like parenting is a big part of this conversation. But what you just illuminated through those statistics is, this massive amount of adoptees that feel very similar feelings, it seems, to what child free people often feel. Like we're left out of the societal norms. We're not following the life script, whether that was by our choice or not, right? Like it goes, there's that whole
Yeah.
aspect to this as well. But either way, it's like people make assumptions about us. People make assumptions about what we think we should know, how we should feel, the way we behave, what we value. And when those things don't feel right for us, it can feel incredibly lonely. So I think what you're doing is massively important. Like we need advocates for all of these groups and communities to be like, wait a minute, you're not the only one out there. And just in my conversation recently with Nicole Louie, we were talking about representation and the power, like when you're in your own kind of siloed life, depending on what you happen to have access to growing up, that isolation of thinking, I'm the only one who's doing life this way. I'm the only one who don't know where my parents come from. I'm the only one in my friend group who doesn't want to have a baby. Like those things weigh on us over time. And if
Yes.
unchecked, you start to feel a little bit less than. And that sucks and that's wrong. But when we can say, wait a minute, there's a bunch of us and this is okay. This is actually beautiful. Like there's a lot that we can celebrate about the way that we were brought up or how we feel or what we're doing next, whatever. And having community, like making those connections of not just like-minded people, but like situation people. I feel like that's the first step to us, like kind of exhaling, realizing we're not in this by ourselves. Then we can start to have some fun with our healing and our expansion and the impact that we can have on the world.
Yes, 100%. And there's so many different types of stories like that, right? Like even when you were just talking right now, like my story of being adopted is not the only one because then there was this sense of disappointment for someone I don't even know when I got pregnant when I was younger. Like,
Uh,
do I do adoption? Do I follow the same path as this person that I don't even know? Is that what I'm supposed to do? Because that's what society says. So there's so many different levels within someone's one story as well that can help us think about things in different ways, right? Like challenge yourself to think about someone else's story. And I have this shirt that I love wearing in public that says be kind because you never know what someone else's story is.
mm,
And just thinking about things like that in an aspect where you can connect with someone and you don't know their history and you don't know their future, but be present with them right now in what they're going through, whether it's positive or negative, or the lonely feelings or the happy feelings, right? Everybody needs that support and everybody needs that individual along with a community.
mm. What you just said is really important. I'm really glad you brought that up of, sometimes it can be helpful to think about, I can't think of a better word than title, but it's like, I'm an adoptee. I'm a child-free woman, like these things. And that can
Yeah.
be helpful to put it out there because then it's like, oh, I can attract others like me. And that's what we're
Yes.
talking about, the power of that. And also, it's unfair to be like, oh my gosh, like I went to kindergarten with a girl who was adopted. And then me just be like, you guys are probably the same. Right? Like you probably think the same and have the same story and like we're in the same situation. That's not okay. And it's the same with child free. Like I'm out here celebrating this choice that I felt so sure about. Like I've had one path and there's a million other circumstances that have led people to lead a life that on the surface may look similar to mine. So I love that you just encouraged us to stay present, stay curious, listen, ask
Yes.
questions on these topics that we're talking about, but every other identifier or self identity that people claim, like we're so complex. And I want that to be not a challenging concept, but a fun concept. Like there's just so much to
Yes.
learn about everybody. And isn't that cool? Like what could be less boring than that?
Yes. And I love how you state things like that too, because in the beginning for me, I considered it ignorance. And that's such a negative term. When you just switch that and say, like, curious or openness, it changes everything from that negative into a better light that allows you to be able to experience different things than maybe you would have experienced it if you would have stayed in that negative connotation.
Love that. Let's go back to this concept of legacy that we talked about in the beginning. And I like the way that you explained this earlier and thinking about it a little bit differently and what it can mean. And that it's not just like traditional family legacy or, legacy wealth, which is tied to family stuff in most cases. Like this is where we hear this term out in society. And I think sometimes legacy, at least in my mind, that felt like a very egotistical thing. Like, oh, I'm going to do something so grand that I don't know, I have a library named after me, or, like I'm famous and I have a huge legacy around that. It felt almost arrogant to want that. And one of the women I'm obsessed with, Fran Lebowitz? She's sort of just a commentator on culture at this point, but she was a famous writer in the 70s. She lives in New York. She's like a New York icon, a very brash person. And she has this whole bit about the fact that legacy, like, who cares about legacy? That's so stupid. I'll be dead. Like, why would I spend my time while I'm alive trying to craft a legacy that I won't even be around to witness? So, all these kind of things coming together, I used to feel like, oh, that's stupid. I'm not going to, who cares, right? I'm just going to
Mm,
live this life and then my life will be over and that's that. But the older I get, that feels not enough, and not from an ego perspective. Like, I'm never going to have a library named after me, but I feel this craving to have something that goes on beyond me or after me.
yeah.
And I hope I'm not paying attention, right? I hope I'm in heaven, like partying it up. And I don't know what people are saying about me down here. But still, like this, I
Yeah.
have this craving to like do something more, do something bigger. For me, I know for sure that's not going to be through traditional family lines, but I would love to hear from you through your organization or just in your personal life. Do you think about this? Like, what comes up for you around the word legacy?
100%. So I definitely have done a ton of journaling and meditation and things around this because I don't want legacy to also just mean my kids or monetary value, right? Like
Mhm.
I don't need those things. So think about it differently and I'll challenge you and anybody listening. So legacy isn't about ego. It's about the energy. And so, what energy do you want to infuse into the spaces that you touch every day? Your work, your family, your community. It's not about like a physical, tangible that you're leaving behind. It's about what you're actually living into right now. So, your values and that ripple effect is going to echo later into life. It's not about just uncovering, like, oh, this is where I'm from, and this is what I want from where I'm from. It's changing it. It's thinking about the truths and the strengths that you are currently embodying. And then once you start to focus on that living legacy, the current thing, then how can you ripple that, right? What consistent influence do you notice you would be able to have on those around you? What is your current story? And how can you create that to be bigger for those that are going to come after you? And also think about it in terms of the truths is something I had said earlier, right? And so, what is the truth or the truths that you want to grow with what you do in your everyday life? Because then when you start to think about those, it doesn't have to be inheritance. It doesn't have to be your name on a building, right?
Mhm.
It can be the internal things, the internal truths, the internal resilience, the intentions that you are cultivating and offering in your actions for that next chapter, whether it's the next generation, whether it's family members that you are around. I know plenty of people. My brother in law is choosing to live a single life. And that
Mhm.
also means he will choose to be child free. And
Mhm.
he loves that. And I love that for him because he also then instills a sense of caring to his nieces and nephews and to his friends. And he's always the first person that his friends and family call when they need that support. And that is a legacy. That is something to be remembered by. That doesn't have to be, I gave money or I have my name up in lights, right? That is something that you are cultivating and offering right now that will leave an impact forever.
The idea of legacy as energy, like the energy that we are putting into the world, I have never heard that before. That resonates with me. I love it. That is gonna live in my brain forever now, I'm so sure. And I just want to thank you for that and everything that you've shared because I feel like if I had a theme for this, you're really giving us permission to think differently about some things that really we're never encouraged to think differently about. There's sort of one way, one definition, one track. Like that is the ubiquitous message. And just by you sharing your story and having this back and forth with me on our own self identities and everything that you're building with Heritage Within, you're giving us and women who I think always could use more permission to express ourselves fully, you're giving us that space to truly unravel some of these concepts and maybe rebuild them in a way that feels personal and aligned for us.
Yes, thank you so much for allowing me to be able to help challenge the way that we think too, because I think you do such a beautiful job with that in the life that you live. And I think there are so many other instances for people to be able to step into this as well, like you said, and just be able to look at it from a different lens and stay curious, right? Like you don't have to find your heritage or your roots to be able to grow something beautiful. You don't have to, even on the flip side of that, you don't have to take the legacy that was left for you to be able to create an impact. You get to choose now. And so focus on that choice and then run with it. Like you have that permission. I love that phrase, permission. Like say that 500 times to yourself because you're the only one that can give yourself that permission.
Laura, I love this. Thank you so, so much for coming. Oh, I'm so thrilled by this conversation, and I have so many takeaways. I will be listening again and again just to help myself in my own life. So, before we close, I'm sure a lot of people listening are curious and how they can learn more about you and your work. What is the best place for people to find and connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for allowing me to be able to give them that opportunity as well. We do have a new website up, so it is heritagewithin.org. We do have opportunity if you feel called to be able to come onto our newsletter where we're going to keep everybody updated on how we are evolving and the impact that we're trying to create. And if you feel like you are someone that would give yourself permission to be able to help others who may be in this space and you have been called and led to be able to have that as your way of being able to create that impact, then definitely reach out to me because we are also looking to be able to partner with different individuals that have the experiences or the backgrounds to build this thing to be bigger and support people on all different walks of life.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Laura. I appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you.
Thank you for listening. Now I want to hear what you learned. DM me on Instagram at Curious Life of a Child Free Woman or leave a review with your top takeaway. These ratings really do make a difference. If you're not a member of the Curious Life Club yet, you are invited. Visit CuriousLifeOfAChildFreeWoman.com to join the conversation, share suggestions, and be first to know the next curious topic. I appreciate you, and I'll see you next week.